Today's episode is with Karly Parrish, who is an engineer turned marketing strategist and founder of Bud to Bloom Marketing. In her ethical marketing business, she serves small business owners through tailor-made strategies that treat people like people and not potential dollar signs. She lives in Maryland with her husband and two pups and loves hiking, reading, iced coffee, and jamming out to Taylor Swift. I can relate to so many things in there, the two dogs, jamming to Taylor Swift, and also like my desire for people to be like people, be treated like people. So I'm so excited to have this conversation with you, Karly. Obviously, I was like fascinated with the idea of you turning from an engineer to like a marketing specialist, and like you do a little bit of virtual assistant and all of that kind of work, right?
Yeah. Virtual assistant work is really how I got my start and then kind of
Okay.
pivoted into that marketing specialty. Yep.
So cool. Well, what else should the listeners know about you?
Ooh, well, you covered the main bullet points there, but I think that the biggest thing is I like to live my life and run my business with just the mindset of staying curious.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really subscribe to having like a fully fleshed out 5 or 10 year plan or anything like that, or at least I don't have one personally. I just think it's so much more fun to stay curious, lean into the things that feel good for you, that excite you. And as I'm sure you'll hear in my story, that's just how I like to live my life.
Okay, I love that so much. I have twin daughters that are 17. They're going to be seniors in high school, and every single day everyone's asking them like, "What's your plan? What's your plan? What's your plan?" And they get so frustrated. They get so annoyed like I just want to live. Like, why are you trying to force me into this plan or force me to make decisions for a year from now? Like, they just want to live right now. And I think it's really cool that that you love the idea of staying curious, to staying open for like what feels right now. And my husband, he's like, that's fine if your plans change, but you should just have some sort of a plan. But and I guess that's probably even more of like what you've done is you've created these plans, but you've also been really open to change, and you've been willing to like take the change when it feels like it's the right decision to be made.
Yeah, definitely.
So let's go back to, so I mentioned when I started and introduced you is that you were an engineer. So you went to school, you got your degree in engineering, and you're working as an engineer. And then all of a sudden you decide to literally change your job, your career. And but let's go back to this. So you're in engineering, and tell me a little bit more about like what that looked like.
Yeah, so I was one of those high schoolers that had my whole life planned out. So you can imagine it took a lot of growth to get to where I am now of just, yeah, we'll figure it out as we go. But senior year of high school, I knew I wanted to do engineering. I think I had my college picked out by like halfway through senior year. I was ready to go. Had the same major all throughout college. I was a fire protection engineer, and I graduated, got my dream job, and I honestly, school was kind of hard. It did not
Yeah.
come easy to me. I definitely leaned on my friends and the professors and the department as a whole a lot to get through it. But once I got my dream job in DC, I was like ready to go. I was so excited to get started. So I felt like I had reached just the peak of my life at that point.
Yeah. What did you love about engineering?
I loved that it was challenging. I loved that. I don't know if it sounds silly to say, but just I was very proud of that title. Like
Mm,
everybody knows for the most part, maybe they don't know what they do, but they know kind of what an engineer is. And,
hmm.
you don't really need to explain it that much,
But like
except
take
for
you
my major, which is
seriously.
yes, yeah, exactly. And being a woman in engineering, there's not a whole lot of those. I think it's definitely improving, but I was proud of that as well. And my department was very small. My graduating class was really close, so it really felt like a family, and we all leaned on one another. And I think the community aspect is actually what kind of drove me to picking that major.
Mm.
And it was, it was interesting. It fascinated me, but yeah, I think that I was really, really excited to find that job and kind of end that chapter of school, because working felt a little bit easier for me, maybe for my personality too, than I guess school did.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Okay. So you're doing your job, and how do you get to this place where you're thinking, I'm going to start something on the side. I'm going to explore this option of being a virtual assistant or going into marketing. Like, what did that look like for you?
Yeah, so that definitely wasn't the plan. It kind of happened by accident. Like, I feel like a lot of us fall into business, but I started a lifestyle blog just for fun right out of college. Like, I'm pretty sure the week I graduated, I created my domain and I was like, oh, I'm just going to do this because now I have some extra time on my hands. And there was absolutely no strategy. I wrote about every single thing on my mind, like totally random. It was just kind of like a personal diary. And pretty shortly after starting that, I guess I started to get some Facebook ads about, make money while blogging and,
Mm-hmm.
earn money doing what you love, that kind of thing. And I started doing more research about it, reading some books, and kind of fell into virtual assistant work about 6 months later or so. And then, got my first client, thought I was just on top of the world. I thought it was so cool that I could make money doing something that I loved. And yeah, from there, it was a couple years of experimenting with some different things. And then I just really noticed that I love marketing, and Bud to Bloom marketing just kind of came from all those different experiences.
So it was kind of like a slow grow of went from blog to virtual assistant, and then you're liking marketing. And how long had you been doing it before you decided to actually walk away from your engineering job?
Not very long. So I went part-time at my job. I had an incredible boss who was very supportive. He knew that I had this business on the side, and they let me go part-time for about 6 months. And then I went full-time. It was about 2 years after I started. And I think in July, it's going to be my 2 years of being full-time in business.
Wow, that's amazing. So, okay, here's the thing that I think is so fascinating about this story is that so many of us, once we have invested so much time or invested so much money, or we've received enough praise from other people, when we are in this position, it's like we're too far in to change our mind. We're too far in to, flip around or change the path. Like, no, I'm this, and this is who I am, and this is what I do. But you didn't do that. Can you tell me about that?
Yes, and I'm really glad that you brought that up, because I have had conversations about that with so many people, because I've had people come to me in my personal life who are like, you spent 4 years working your butt off to get this degree, and you only worked in the field for 2 years, and then you just quit. Like, don't you regret that ever? Do you ever think about, if things were different? And I'm like, yes, that stung. It pains me sometimes to think about, how much work I put into the degree and everything. But ultimately, every experience happens for a reason. And I took so many things from college, and, there was a lot there besides the degree that I think I gained from that experience. But 6 years total compared to the rest of my life is nothing. And I want to spend, each day moving forward doing something that I love, that lights me up. And 6 years really is just a little tiny bit, hopefully, in the life that I would love to live.
That gave you goosebumps all over. I wasn't exactly sure like where you were going. But that is so, so powerful and so beautiful. The other thing that I want to just encourage you is like, what percentage of the classes that you had to take actually taught you about your degree, right? So guess what? There's always something to be learned. Like, I'm sorry, the fine art classes that you were required to take, like that was just enjoyment, right? You just got to experience some things, you got to learn some things. And also something that I'm really passionate about is like how you show up now is how you'll show up later. And so even if the fact of the matter of you going to school for 4 years and doing the work and working really hard and committing to something in that season, like that yes, you got a degree out of it, right? And yes, that gives you an opportunity to work in a specific place, but how cool that you actually learned how to learn. You learned how to stay committed. You learned how to work hard. You learned that you are capable of so much. And every single ounce of that you get to take wherever you go.
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely. There are so many things that I didn't even realize I would use now that I use in my business, like the problem solving and thinking analytically. I mean, I used to almost want to hide the fact that I got a degree in engineering because I'm like, oh, I don't have a business degree. I don't have a marketing degree. And it was almost something I was ashamed of. But now I'm like, no, wait, I have these different skills that maybe somebody with a business or marketing degree, they don't have, because it's just different things that you're learning. And now I'm really proud of that.
Yeah, I love that so much. And so let's talk more about this, 6 years, okay? So you invested 6 years of your time thinking that that being an engineer was what you wanted to be and what you wanted to do. And then the most beautiful thing I've ever heard is like 6 years is really small compared to the rest of my life. And I wish so much that we would all think more like that we would all, instead of panicking and sticking on the same path just because that's a path we're on, realizing that we get to take whatever it is that we've built and use it to our advantage of where we want to go next. Like no one is stuck. No one is forcing us to stay in situations except for ourselves, because we have these beliefs that it's like giving up, that we have these beliefs that it's like wrong or bad or waste of time or money, or people would be disappointed in us. Were there people who were disappointed in you?
If there were, I didn't really hear about it because I had the best family and friends. And I know we talked a little before we hit record about my husband and how supportive he was throughout this whole transition, even though we were just getting engaged and married during the time. And there's a lot going on there. But I think everybody just wanted to see me happy. And, I think that hopefully goes for everyone listening too. If there's a decision that, you want to make that, it's going to make you happier, people in your life just want to see that. They just want to see, you being the happiest version of yourself that you can be. And it's allowed me, I think, to show up as a better, sister, daughter, wife, friend, because I am not juggling all these different things anymore. I'm just truly feel like I'm living my purpose.
So let's talk. You said how, if something's going to make you happier. So how did you know that this would make you happier?
I recognize that when I woke up every day, first thing I thought about was my side hustle. And, I can't wait to get home from work and work on this blog post that I have in mind, or I can't wait to have a call with this client. And I felt like I needed to get through the workday so that I could get to those things that really excited me. And, I'd listen to all the business podcasts on the metro going to work. And I always had in the back of my mind, like, one day, this is what I'm going to do. Didn't know when it was going to happen, but I was really committed to that goal. And I think you just know, there's just like a peace. For me, it was just like a peace that I felt in my soul whenever I thought about this side hustle growing and whenever I thought about doing that work. And I was proud of my 9-to-5 job that I had and the work that I did, but I didn't feel that same level of peace and excitement when I thought about the future in that.
Yeah. So much of what I hear coming from you is like trust in yourself. I just hear so much that you trust yourself to hear things, to know things, and to make decisions. Is that something that has always come naturally to you, or was there like a season that maybe really grew that trust in yourself? Tell me about that.
No, it didn't always come natural to me. I feel like I really leaned on the opinions of, parents, teachers, friends, all the people that help shape you into who you are growing up. And then you become an adult and you need to learn to make those decisions for yourself. And with a decision as big as this one, I felt like I needed to trust myself first before anybody else would, because if I'm hesitant going into this massive life change,
Yeah.
I would imagine that would make my family hesitant and, my friends and everything. But because I was so committed to it and so confident in the decision, I think it was pretty easy for other people to get on board.
Did you ever have a fear of like, what if this doesn't work out? What if it fails? Then what would I do?
Oh yeah. And that still comes up like all the time,
Yeah.
I don't think that ever goes away, but I still think it was the best decision that I could have made. And, I felt that a lot at first just because it was such a big change. And, I've never been my own boss before. I've never been fully in charge of my schedule and the work that I do. So it was a lot of responsibility. But after that initial adjustment period, I was like, okay, I think I was made to do this.
Yeah, absolutely. And what has the growth been like for you individually?
Oh my gosh. I think I have grown in like every aspect of my personal life just from starting my business. And, you mentioned having trust in yourself. That is huge and definitely something that I've strengthened along this. And being able to stand up for myself and set boundaries with people and set boundaries with myself because
that's the hardest
when you love
one.
the work that you do. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, when you love the work that you do, you just want to maybe do it all the time and check emails on the weekends when you're out with friends and things like that. And I need to train myself to not do that and really act like this is, a quote unquote normal job where we have those boundaries in place, hopefully.
Yes.
And yeah, and that was hard because there's nobody else to hold you accountable. You need to learn how to hold yourself accountable, which can also be very difficult.
Yeah, maybe one of the most difficult things in the world, actually. So I also am an entrepreneur. I own my own businesses. And I remember just like going, doing the things, right? Like all the to-do lists, all the working. And then all of a sudden I was like, wait, this is it? This is it? Because I never paid attention to the fact that I didn't have those boundaries in place. I didn't have set times. I didn't have like walkaways. I didn't not respond. If people were texting me on the weekend, I was responding to them. And I got to the place where I had the thought, like, whatever you allow will continue. And that is for yourself. And that is for your clients, for your customers. It's like whatever you're allowing, that's what's going to be. That's going to continue as long as you allow it to be. And so then I stopped and I started thinking like, what do I want to continue to allow? What do I want? Like, can I do this forever? Do I want people to be texting me at 6 a.m? Do I want them to think I'm going to respond to them on a Sunday night? Do I want to be thinking about work all day, all night? Do I want to work on the weekends? Like, what do I actually want? And what do I want it to look like? And then I had to work backwards and really like get honest with myself to create a business that could survive for a long time, that felt really good, that worked with my family and my life. And I think that's something that no one really prepares you for when you're starting your business.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's so good. Yeah. Yeah, I had no boundaries when I started my business too. We lived in a 1-bedroom apartment and my office was our kitchen table. And I remember like I would swap out my engineering laptop for my personal laptop in the evenings and just work up until we're going to bed. And, my husband's sitting over there on the couch with the dogs and he's watching TV or doing whatever his evening, wind down activity is while I'm like just typing away. And it was every weekend. I remember planning our wedding venue tours around when clients wanted me to work on Saturdays and Sunday mornings.
Oh,
and,
man.
I should be enjoying this really exciting time, but I was like, well, we can only do it after 11 because I'm going to be on with this client at this time. And it was a lot, but I'm kind of glad that I started like that because, like you said, it's allowed me to really sit and think, do I want this forever? Is this sustainable long term? And of course, the answer was no, that it was not.
Yeah. No, it's true. And I think that there is a lot of business where that there's a lot of people right now who are preaching like anti-hustle culture, anti like hard work, like let it flow, blah, blah, blah. And those are all people who have gotten to a certain level of success. That's what I'm noticing is
Mhm.
that yes, and so it could be this like that is really easy for you to say. And do I wish that I could have, well, in the beginning of my business, when I was working really hard, when I didn't really want to turn away clients because I didn't know what was coming or not coming next, do I wish that I would have had someone be like, okay, here's the cool part is that you can set a schedule, you can set expectations, you can, you don't have to be readily available at all times for anyone who needs you. Yes, I do wish that. But there is also a certain level of like, you got to work really hard to get your business going. You have to be really committed and you have to show up when possible when you're starting your business. That's just a thing. And so, but the sooner that you can recognize and get those boundaries in place and get the schedule, to work to your advantage and realize that, if you're good enough at what you do, people are going to allow you to set the standards.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think there is a time and a place for hustle. I just don't think it can last forever.
Right.
But
That's
yeah,
exactly it.
like you said, it does take that initial. I mean, I just took my first totally unplugged vacation ever for a week and a half. We went to Iceland for anniversary, and I was like,
Amazing.
I'm leaving my laptop at home. And I felt like I was missing my arm. It was like so weird and so uncomfortable. But I got back and I said, you know what? I'm not re-downloading my email on my phone. I don't know why it was there to begin with. And
Yeah.
it took me a while to get to that point. But yeah, slowly adding those boundaries in and recognizing where you need them is important.
And that's another example of you saying that you stay open, right? Like you go on vacation, you didn't take your laptop and you learned something. You learned that maybe you don't want your email on your phone, and that's okay. And for me, it's like having email on my phone gives me the flexibility to be able to go be with my kids in all these different places when I'm not at the shop. And so, like, every situation is going to be so different for all of us, but it is that key of like staying open to what is working for you and then what's no longer working for you to make sure that you're staying in integrity with yourself.
Oh yeah, that's so important. Yeah. And it might not last forever. Like I don't have kids yet. Maybe when I do and I'm out of the house
Yeah.
much more, maybe I'll need to have email on my phone.
1,000,000%. And every single
Yeah.
person is so different, right? Like maybe someone doesn't want to have a laptop. Maybe they don't even need a laptop for their phone, but it is paying attention to what's working for you and what's not working for you. So that's really cool. So if some of the listeners here are sitting here and they're thinking like, guess what? I have this thing that just feels like the easy thing to do. It feels like I'm already here. I'm doing this thing and like it's not my favorite thing and I don't really love it. And I do have something over here that feels exciting. It feels like something that lights me up that I want to get out of bed for. What advice would you give those listeners?
Oh, I always think that if you have that little tiny nudge on your heart, that little whisper that there is something else that excites you, I think it's there for a reason. And I realized that not everybody has that. A lot of
Yeah.
people love if it is like working a 9 to 5, obviously we have so many people who are so good at that and they were made for that. But then, maybe there's something else that is a better fit for you. If you can recognize that there's something that excites you, I think that's there for a reason and you should follow it. You don't need to drop everything else and just go all in. You can take small little baby steps. Like, what's the next easiest step that you can take? But that is definitely there for a reason for you.
To like explore that option.
Yeah, stay curious.
Stay curious. I love that message. I think what does curious mean to you?
I think it means leaning into what feels good for you without having any sort of expectation about it. Like, it doesn't need to be a massive success. It's okay if it's a failure, but, just like leaning into that and yeah, just see what happens.
So good. I love that so much. Well, I think that your story is super inspiring. I think that it is something that we can all learn from, this idea of staying curious, of staying open-minded, and being able to do things that really light us on, like light our hearts on fire, make us excited to get out of bed. And that actually leads to the questions that I finished the podcast episodes with. It's this idea of fire in our heart and peace in our soul. And the thing we've kind of been talking about, this fire in your heart. What made you excited? What made you like, you felt like, oh, this is like where my passion is. This is what's like taking my attention. But also the second part of the question that I'm going to ask you is like, how do you protect the peace of your soul? And here that I want to bring attention to before you answer these questions is like, peace of your soul could be protected by, quiet time alone. It could be by, walking outside in nature and all those things. But I also want to bring attention to the fact that if you have promptings on your heart, protecting your peace is actually listening to those promptings, because nothing can bring more like take away your peace by these things that are trying to guide you and nudge you, like that internal heart guide that you're ignoring. And so that's just like something that came to my mind that I wanted to share with anyone listening. But I do want to ask you these questions. So obviously we're talking about this, and maybe you have some other answers as well, but like, what is currently lighting your heart on fire?
Right now, the biggest thing is connecting with business owners in person. And I think I have gotten so used to the online space and meeting people over Zoom, which is wonderful. I mean, you can talk to people from all over the place, but there's just something so different, and the energy is different, and being able to hug people in person. I have been really trying to make that happen through working with more of my local businesses, meeting up with fellow business owners for coffee. And that's just really exciting me right now.
I love that you share that, because before we started recording, you had mentioned that you realized that what you actually loved about engineering was the people that you were working with, that community, that connection. And it wasn't necessarily like the engineering work that you were doing. And so how cool that now you're doing the work that you're really passionate about, that you really love, and you're bringing in that element of human connection that was the other part of what you loved. That's so smart and so cool of you. Thank you for sharing that. And what is something that you do to protect the peace of your soul?
I would say, and it sounds really simple, but just say no to the things that I don't want to do. And I used to be awful at this. I would say yes if I had space on my calendar, no matter what someone was asking of me. And then I read the book Essentialism, and
such a good book.
Kind of changed my whole. It's so good. Kind of changed my whole outlook there. And I still love having a packed schedule and seeing family and friends, but on the weekends, if I can carve out at least a couple hours to myself to prepare for the week ahead, or read a book, or just do something to kind of slow down, I really like to factor that in.
Yeah, that's so good. And I think it is so hard to say no to just because you can. And it's like, just because you can doesn't mean you should, right? And intentional slow down time is so important, like something that we have to protect just as much as we protect the hustle that we have. So I love that you shared that. So Karly, where can the listeners find you?
Yeah, you can come hang out with me on Instagram at Bud to Bloom Marketing. And my website is budtobloommarketing.com. You can check out all the things, browse the services, read a little bit more about me and my story. And I also have a free co-working group for creatives called Content Coffee House on there. So if
cool.
You too love community, that's the place to be.
Oh, I love that. We will link all of those in the show notes, so make sure to check those out. Karly, thank you so much for coming on, for sharing your story, for being an example of listening and trusting yourself and making the pivot when it felt like the right thing, and also like the success and happiness that can come from doing so.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much for having me.